Our universe rests on the uneasy border between two worlds. The world of man, ordinary and stable, and the world of games, imaginative and chaotic. Where these worlds collide, one man is called to stand for reason, maintain the balance, and destroy ignorance. He is the Game Overthinker.
Hey gang, it's me, Bob, Movie Bob, the Game Overthinker, back here at home base after that adventure in Wario's Woods, catching up on some of the news I missed while that whole thing was going on. So let's take a look and see if I missed anything. Huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Oh no, really? On April 9th of this year, one of the most important and least well-known figures in video game history passed away at the age of 70. His name was Jerry Lawson. People called him Jerry. Jerry Lawson wasn't especially famous, even within the gaming community. He didn't seek the spotlight, and he didn't work in the flashy development or promotion sides of the business. He didn't design a best-selling game or create a popular character, and he wasn't the face of a big-time company. But nonetheless, his name unquestionably must stand alongside titans like Nolan Bushnell, Gunpei Yokoi, Shigeru Miyamoto, and others without whom video games might never have moved beyond the constraints of coin ops or being mere bonus features on home computers. Jerry Lawson invented the cartridge. You know, it's easy to forget how monumental the obstacles to making home video games possible initially were. Early computers and all their various permutations were fidgety, unfriendly devices, and the most unfriendly thing about them was how difficult it was to make one machine do multiple things. It's relatively easy from an engineering standpoint to build a dedicated device that will allow you to play one built-in game on your TV, or maybe even several built-in games. But one that could run multiple game programs interchangeably, that was almost unthinkable. Getting even the most user-friendly home computer to run interchangeable programs was no simple plug-and-play task, often requiring multiple disks and a basic understanding of programming language. It simply wasn't going to fly for something that was expected to live in people's rec rooms and be easily usable by anyone. Being able to sell the games as a separate product from the system would keep immediate costs down and create a long-term revenue stream. Everyone understood that. But how would you do it? The ultimate answer arrived at by Lawson and his team, storing the game-specific data on a removable computer chip built to snap interface with the operating system and video components of the console, may seem rather obvious to modern eyes, but remember that they also had to make it work. In this era of computing, swapping out chips without the aid of a toolkit and precise instructions was remarkable in and of itself, but in having to design it to work under tremendous wear and tear without, say, delivering a static shock during insertion or removal, Lawson's team was in wholly uncharted territory. The result was 1976's Fairchild Channel F, the first cartridge-based console, and while it was ultimately overshadowed by the Atari 2600 cartridge system that followed in its footsteps a year later, yes, Channel F was the first. I'm of the opinion that Lawson's creation, the video game cartridge, was to video games what Gutenberg's press was to the written word. Carts brought gaming to the masses. Suddenly, to play a video game in your home, you didn't need to know a damn thing about code or multiple disk management, or even have a home computer, which was a luxury item at the time. Loading and playing a video game was as simple as operating a tape deck now. Suddenly, video games were easy enough for the most techno-incompetent adult and durable enough for the kids, and retailers had a uniform product they could package, display, and sell. In addition, this, of course, is the original breaking point where PC gamer elitism was first born. But we'll talk about that next time I need a traffic-boosting flame war. Mwah. Love you too, Dollface. Of course, it wasn't a permanent solution. In the streamlined world of the 90s and early 2000s, the ability of compact discs to store and play media in a more or less universal way made the practice of stuffing one proprietary plastic box into another, bigger proprietary plastic box seem pretty damn square. Plus, CDs could store data in less space, and their universal availability was a dream come true for third parties, who'd suffered for years under the system where companies like Nintendo could hold them hostage over cartridge components. And by and large, CDs, DVDs, and now Blu-rays have been as good to gaming as they've been to every other medium. But today, the world of electronic media stands in a strange, unwieldy place, unsure of its next move for the first time in decades. The problem with storing programs and games on CDs was that they couldn't write to themselves. Ironically, if you wanted to take a save game with you in the immediate post-PlayStation world, you were still carrying around a small cartridge in the form of a memory card. But advancements in the miniaturization of hard disk storage offered a different solution. Whereas we used to transport files back and forth from one computer to another by burning and reburning writable disks, SD cards and USB drives now do the deed, and waiting in the wings is the omnipresent approach of the cloud, the still theoretical state where all media will be online all the time, with all the storage being distributed across the endless digital ether that everyone more or less agrees is coming, but no one can say exactly when.
Two things are immediately clear to me. Firstly, yes, the cloud is coming, and it's going to make this whole discussion somewhat redundant. And secondly, until it does get here, the current storage setup we have for gaming just isn't cutting it. The idea that through any random combo of portable phones and flash drives, I can bring my music, my movies, and other files from device to device, but I can't do the same with my games and saved game data, is just silly. And no, the fact that I can pull my profile up over the internet on someone else's machine doesn't cut it. And especially not in a world where wireless internet is less than universal, or where, say, the PlayStation Network can go down for weeks at a time. How's that working out for you?
In my humble opinion, we need something to define data storage for console gaming in between the age of discs and the age of the cloud. And I think that something might just be a brief, or perhaps not so brief, return to the cartridge.
Now I know what you're thinking. This is just baseless nostalgia talking. Normally, I'd be inclined to say the same thing. I mean, I'll admit right up front I've got a fond remembrance for the world and mechanics of carts, the shelves full of boxes, the sound of the spring loader on the NES, that whole thing. But for a change, this isn't growing out of my latent desire to rewind the world and freeze it at about 1987. I'm talking serious, practical stuff here.
Right now, the largest format in terms of data storage for individual games are the Blu-ray disc currently used by the PlayStation 3. A single-layer Blu-ray is the same size as a CD but can hold 25 gigs of data, and dual-layer discs going up to 50, and theoretical multi-layer discs going even bigger than that. That's pretty damn impressive, but it does come with the same limitations as writable discs have always had. Load times are still an issue after all these years, and the relatively delicate discs are still vulnerable to dust, scratches, and finicky lasers. Average price of a AAA PS3 game stored on this format, $60. And keep in mind, next to no games are actually using all of that space, and that goes for all formats across the board. That price point is, in theory, supposed to be all about the content, not the piece of metal and plastic it's been pressed onto. You know what else cost $60 back when it first came out? Double Dragon on the NES. Game pricing has been a racket for a long time. Now, consider this. Multi-gig memory can be and is already being done on a much smaller scale in the realm of solid-state media, aka USB flash drives. Many of the individual big-ticket games out there right now could easily be stored on a thumb drive, and not even a super huge one either. And since flash drives and other technologies like them are a drive running directly into the device interface, load times are almost non-existent, certainly less so than the ones you get while a laser hunts down data points on a Blu-ray disc. You already get where I'm going with this. We already have the technology and the means and the business model for someone to at least try building a next-gen cartridge-based console using the components of solid-state memory as a starting point.
I know, sounds crazy, probably is, but hear me out. Remember, we're not talking about this being a permanent solution, merely a transitional technology to bridge the gap between the eras of disk storage and the era of cloud storage, in much the same way that the video and audio cassette tapes bridged the gap between analog reel-to-reel threading and, well, digital everything. Basically, disks are no longer good enough, the cloud isn't here yet, I think we need a third way. For now.
Now, I'm no engineer, but I imagine we wouldn't be talking about the palm-sized cartridges of the past. The theoretical cartridge of tomorrow would probably look more like a flash drive, with the actual storage divided into two sections. Hard game data in a primary section, coded to prevent copying and or transferring in order to prevent piracy, and user-specific data like save games, scores, and preferences stored in a secondary writable section that can be shared and transferred. In terms of the interface, well, that's a no-brainer. Build it around one of the two existing capable in-and-out interface technologies, USB and SD, that damn near every self-respecting piece of hardware already has built into it. Now, obviously, it would be insane to imagine a generation of consoles built entirely around this kind of interface, but since most consoles are already running both discs and USB SD setups in some way, I don't think that a machine built for discs and this new variation on cartridges is an odd prospect at all. Solid-state media carts wouldn't be a necessary solution for all games, merely the big ones requiring massive amounts of storage to begin with. Imagine, if you will, instead of our current two-tiered price model, i.e. the average new physical retail game runs about $50 to $60, while the average download-only title usually runs less than half that, a three-tiered model. The download streaming scene for small titles, top prices for the huge AAA monsters on cartridges, and now mid-range prices for mid-range games on discs. Of course, that's just some real pie-in-the-sky stuff. You'll never get game publishers to admit there's no fucking excuse for 7-hour Homefront to cost as much first day as the 25-hour Lords of Shadow. Finally, in theory, this could help keep the actual costs of consoles themselves way down. Think about it. If our AAA titles are acting as their own storage devices for the most part, there's drastically less need for massive built-in storage on the consoles themselves. Ironically, one of the very problems the original cartridge was developed to solve.
So yeah, that's my first big crazy idea for the industry in 2011. Bring back the cartridge. Let's see if Jerry Lawson's invention can revolutionize this industry all over again.